Dr. Yusuf, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Ine.
So I was just
Thanks
trying
for
to,
having me.
I was just trying to share part of your statement which you shared with us and with the public on this 15%. But maybe you should help us understand your perspective better.
Well, the major concern here is about protecting domestic industries. Currently, of course, Dangote refinery, is on the spotlight now. But the general principle of the position of CPPE is that Nigerian producers need to be protected. And already currently there are various degrees of protection for existing manufacturers across different sectors of the economy. Because the conditions in which they are operating is very, very challenging. And as a country, we need to make a choice. We need to make a decision. Whether we want producers or we should all migrate to importation. Of course, the latter is not a good option. And the government, of course, is committed to industrialization. If you are truly committed to industrialization, there has to be a framework to protect domestic industries. Already we have such protection with the pharmaceutical companies. We have protection for cement. We have protection for iron and steel. We have protection for many producers in the agro-allied industries. So it's not anything new. And for some of these protectionist policies, some of them have import duty plus tariff and import adjustment tax, sometimes up to 50%. Even in some extreme cases, close to 70% import charges. But here we are talking about 15% to safeguard emerging domestic refineries. We all know how much damage importation of petroleum products had done to this economy. It almost put this economy to bankruptcy. So we need to move away from that. So that is the whole essence of this argument. Of course, I heard people talk about increase in fuel price and all of that, monopoly and so on. Well, these are details that you can have conversation around. So basically, that is the concern.
You heard also the argument of perhaps these reforms need to be taken in bits. So if we add, we know that the tax reform is starting in a couple of months, then we add this to all of that, plus of course the one you have raised, which is what it would do to the price of petrol at the pump. Perhaps that is the consideration of the government. Let's take it in bits. Start with the reforms which starts in January and then see how that feels before we add another.
No, you see, Ini, if you have very comprehensive and robust conversation, this argument of risk of price increases of petroleum products, those arguments, it can be dealt with. If the governments work closely with those who have invested in the sector, you can come up with a framework on how to ensure that prices doesn't increase. There are fiscal policies, there are monetary policies, there are supports that you can give to domestic manufacturers to make sure that their prices come down. Because if you want to bring down prices, the solution is not to go and start importing. If you start importing as a solution, you will kill the manufacturing sector that is already existing.
But Dr. Yusuf, do you think that
the challenge?
Sorry, Dr. Yusuf, do you think that the government has had those conversations? First, remember when we talked about the subsidy removal, even the IMF and World Bank were like, the government should have put in place a social welfare structure before the removal. So these conversations you're talking about, are you aware that perhaps the government has had such conversations, or they want to take this time to have those conversations?
No, well, I'm not aware of any such conversation. But I know that that is the way to go. Because we have the interest of domestic investors to deal with. We have the interest of the consumers to deal with. Of course, sometimes these things can be conflicting. But if there is a very robust conversation, which I'm not aware already exists, we can have policy regimes that we can activate or deploy, working with domestic producers to ensure that their prices are reasonable or comes down. It's not only for refined petroleum products. We can have similar conversation with those who are in flour mills, for instance, so that the price of bread can come down, the price of noodles can come down. We can have similar conversation with those who are producing cooking gas. That this is something that the common people consume a lot. How do we bring down the price? We will have solution, pragmatic, sustainable, and equitable solution. We can have it. We cannot say because of fears of price increases, then you now throw domestic investors to a complete loss. I mean, what kind of signal will it send to investors? That means we are not interested in production. Because there is no way a manufacturer in Nigeria, given all the challenges of production, can compete with products that are coming from outside the country that has no duty at all. Because these people are proposing, they don't want duty, no VAT. There's no manufacturer that can compete in that situation. And yet, in the interest of energy security, in the interest of job creation, in the interest of conservation of foreign exchange, we need to do that. So I agree it's a delicate balancing act, but it's doable. Yeah, because we cannot afford to sacrifice a $20 billion investment by a Nigerian. I mean, that is unthinkable. So that is my own concern.
I guess another worrying factor in all of this is, maybe I missed it and you can please correct me. We did not hear the reason that the government gave for ending this plan and if there's a future to it or something.
Well, first of all, I read a report 2 days ago that the policy was only moved to first quarter of next year. That by first quarter of next year, this is the import duty will return. Perhaps there are concerns about capacity, domestic capacity. That okay, if you do this, if domestic capacity cannot cover up to 80 or 90%, and if you have imports coming heavily at that import, prices will go up. So the central concern, in my view, is about high prices. And I can relate with that. But my own position is that if you want to deal with the problem of high prices, the solution is not to go and open the doors for cheap imports to be coming in. The solution is to work with those who are on ground to come up with a framework that will not hurt them. Because we don't want those who have invested in production to regret investing in production. We don't want signaling. I mean, what kind of signal are we going to send to those who want to invest in the real sector of the economy? All of us cannot be investing in bonds and treasury bills, which is a comfort zone, as it were. We need people to invest in real economy, where jobs will be created, where there will be multiplier effect, where you can, ensure economic security. If so, a country like US is talking of protectionism, this is the biggest economy globally. Talk less of a country like Nigeria. So we need to balance these interests. And we need to worry about the kind of signaling it gives to those who are financing industries, to those who are potential investors. I mean, if you want to invest in refineries and you are seeing all of this, will you invest in refineries? Of course you will not. And if you have that situation, now that people will come and say there is monopoly, because we have scared people away. So I think engagement with manufacturers will go a long way in dealing with this situation.
All right, Dr. Yusuf, let's also talk about one development that happened towards the end of last week, and that's the S&P Global Ratings. They revised their outlook on Nigeria to positive from stable. And of course, this is good news. And I think the last time this happened, the first ever in over a decade, indicating a potential for ratings upgrade within the next 12 months if the government sustains its reform momentum. So this is kudos to the reforms that President Bola Tinubu has initiated and keeps driving. I guess this at least should give us a little bit of comfort.
Of course, of course. You know, these ratings have a way of projecting the economy as an economy where people can bring in their capital to. It improves the perception of the economy as a destination for investment. It lowers the risk of borrowing abroad. It encourages a lot of investors to come to different sectors of the economy. Sectors like the stock market will benefit because the perception that, okay, this is a stable economy, at least at macroeconomically is stable. It will encourage investors to come to the stock market. It will encourage investors to come into real estate, into infrastructure, into ICT. So the whole thing is about having a kind of, clean bill of health that, okay, this economy is healthy. You can go and invest there. It's not as risky as it used to be. If you go there, you'll be able to take your money out. And that is what the reform has done, because the reform had impacted on the critical macroeconomic variables. That is not generating this level of confidence. Before the S&P rating, which was moved from stable to positive, we have had the Fitch. We had the Fitch rating in May. Sorry, or Moody's. We had Moody's rating in May. Before then, which was also positive. Before then, we had the Fitch rating, which was also positive. So all these ratings are very good for the economy. And I've heard people say, what is the implication of that for the average Nigerian? Is it going to put food on the table and all of that? The point is that if you have a rating regime that is positive for the economy, it encourages more investment into the economy. If you have more investment into the economy, it benefits everybody, including the common people. Because it is investment that will create the jobs. It will investment that will create the wealth. It will investment that will create revenue. So that is the nexus between these ratings and both the economy and even the welfare of the people.
Have this, Dr. Yusuf. What should we be doing as a people, as a country, as the government to maximize this positive rating or outlook that we have?
Well, what we should be doing is, because the major challenge we have had as far as the investment environment is concerned, we used to have macroeconomic challenges that has moderated significantly. The second major challenge that we normally have been having are the structural issues. We are talking about infrastructure, we are talking about consistency of regulation, we are talking about the regulatory environment. Those structural issues are very important for us to be able to optimize and harness and harvest the opportunities that these positive ratings could create for the economy. So we should address the structural issues. And on top of that, we need to address the issue of welfare, because it's a recurring decimal. When you report this kind of positive developments, people will ask you, will this put bread on the table? Will this reduce the cost of bread? Will it reduce the cost of noodles and so on? So that nexus we also need to develop. So we need to be intentional about ensuring that these benefits trickle down and put food on the table for the average Nigerian. So we play around with a lot of policy instruments and policy choices to be able to translate this into benefits both to investors and to the citizens. And you do that through the activation of all the policy instruments that are available to government. Fiscal policy, trade policy, tax policy, investment policy, forex policy, all these things. All of them can put something on the table to be able to address the concerns of the citizens and the concerns of businesses, especially the SMEs. So that is the way we can maximize or optimize these opportunities.
All right, Dr. Yusuf, I was just thinking, you know, we talked a whole lot about having Africa rating companies and all, but I guess when we see positives like this, we don't remember that. But when when we get the negative ratings, we think about having our own rating agencies. I haven't heard that conversation in a bit.
Yes, yes, but you know, it is natural because the international or global rating agencies, investors globally reckon more with them because the target essentially is to ensure that we're able to attract more capital into the economy. Whether you are talking of FDI or you are talking about portfolio flows. That's not to diminish the importance of even the domestic capital. Even domestic capital. Some domestic investors will also raise money from abroad. So the significance, there's a huge differential in the value and the significance of these ratings. So I think it's normal for people to feel that, okay, these global ratings are likely to be more credible. This local ratings. I think that is the psychology, in my view, around that kind of reasoning.
All right, Dr. Muda Yusuf, thank you so much for taking time out and joining us in spite of, you know, your attempt to be here and being held in traffic. Dr. Muda Yusuf is the Chief Executive Officer of
Thank you very much.
Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise.